So previously we discussed some web technology services, especially provided by the internet. Now we need to cover as well some concepts that are very important for us to understand what are web technologies. So basically, in order to access services on the internet, the following terms that we're going to be discussing right now will help you to become familiar with some web technology concepts. Okay, the objectives are, we're going to define web technology terms, we're going to understand what is TCP/IP, we're going to identify main components of URL, what is URL, we're going to understand what is HTML, explain what is homepage, search engine, bookmark, and indexing, differentiate between blog, vlog, and podcast, list and identify examples of VoIP or VoIP, and we're going to value the importance of internet cache in web technologies. Internet protocol or IP. So with so many different computer networks linked together, so imagine your computer connected with your friend's computer and you can exchange data, exchange messages with those computers over the internet. There has to be a standard way in which different networks are linked together. Okay, so this standard way that the different networks can be linked together are allowed or provided to us because of protocols. So protocols are a set of rules. Okay, so the set of rules is known as protocols, and whenever we can send and receive data over the internet, that is known as TCP/IP. This is not the same as data exchange. Okay, this is not the same as file transfer protocol that we discussed previously, because I said that file transfer protocol is basically a server that has all these files together that we can pick from whenever we send something from one computer to another. But for FTP to happen, a protocol needs to be established, and this protocol is called TCP/IP, which is what allows the sending and receiving of data to happen over the internet. Okay, so we're gonna look at TCP and IP. So TCP/IP, first of all, TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol, while IP stands for Internet Protocol. These two things combined together, okay? These things combined together, what they do is that they break down the data that is being transferred from one computer to another computer into little chunks or little packets, if we can say, which are sent to other computers on the internet. Okay? TCP/IP also ensures that the data is reassembled into its original form once it is reached. So whenever we're sending data from this computer to this computer, TCP/IP will be in charge of breaking the data being sent into packets or little chunks, and when it reaches its destination, TCP/IP will also be in charge of assembling or reassembling the little packets that was first separated in the beginning. Okay? Now, IP address. So this is very interesting. IP address stands for Internet Protocol Address. Okay? So getting data to the right computer on the internet is very important. We don't want to send an email to a certain user and then this email reaches somewhere else. We don't want that to happen. Okay? Or we don't want to send a picture to a certain computer and then it reaches to someone else. Okay? So especially if there are many computers out there, we don't want this to happen. So for instance, let me think of this example. Whenever you address a letter to be sent through the post, okay, you have to be specific about where you want it to go. You want to provide the house number, you want to provide the zip code if it's in the US, the postcode, if maybe it's gonna be sent to an apartment. that has multiple rooms, you want to specify the PO box number that it's gonna be directed to. Okay, so that same principle applies to whenever we're sending something using the internet. Okay, so in this case we use an IP address, which is a unique address that identifies a host computer. Now, what is a host computer? A host computer on the internet is one that provides services and communicates with other hosts on the network. Okay, so each host computer or each computer has its own unique address to identify it. Okay, so this address is what is referred to as the IP address. If you can look at this picture here, okay, this person here has his own IP address here, and whenever he's sending something to someone else over the internet, all these persons are gonna have their own IP address as well. Okay, so if I'm sending something to this here, I'm gonna specify, or because of the IP address protocol, it's gonna specify that this message goes directly to this designated IP address. Okay, now let's look closely at what is an IP or an IP address. So an IP, as I mentioned before, is Internet Protocol. Remember, Internet Protocol works hand in hand with TCP, but separating it together, Internet Protocol is usually something that is 4 numbers separated by a full stop. For instance, this, okay, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 numbers separated by full stops. Okay, now the first 2 or 3 numbers, these 3 here, or 2, usually, okay, I'll say this for the first time, usually identify the computer network, while the remaining, okay, represent the computer that is being sent, the computer that you're using. So at this point, if you're using a device, maybe a tablet, a phone, or your laptop, okay, your laptop or your device has an IP address, an Internet Protocol, okay, an IP. The first 3 numbers are the computer network, while the last number is identifying your device. Okay, now this is very easy to understand. If you're at home, alright, if you're at home and you have Wi-Fi network for everyone, and let's say that there are 5 different devices connected. Now all these 5 different devices will have the same numbers for the first 3 sections. Okay, all the devices will have 194.238.196. However, the last set of the section of the IP address will have a unique number, and this unique number is what will identify the specific devices. Okay, do you understand that? So it is much easier to type. Now IP addresses are not only for devices, but IP addresses are also identify websites. Okay, so it is much easier to type in and remember something called a domain name, such as www.cxc.org or www.facebook.com. Okay, so it's easier to type in the domain name, which is this, rather than typing in the specific IP address for those websites. So remember, I said IP protocols are not only for devices but also for things that we access on the internet, like websites, and each website has its own IP address, but instead of us remembering the IP address, which can be numbers that we will not remember, we use something called an IP address, which is the domain name. So there's also something that's a disadvantage with the use of internet protocols, is that this is something that will allow your device or yourself to be identified or tracked down wherever you are on the internet. Okay, so if someone that has very much knowledge of how to access internet protocols, they can access your location by tracking down your IP address and knowing where exactly you're located. Okay, and keep in mind that every time you send an email, a message, every time you open a web page on a web browser, your IP address is being sent behind the scenes without you noticing it. So another important term is internet address. Now remember, we have TCP, we have IP, but we also have internet address, which is referred to as things that are there on the web. How do we access the web? So once we access the web using a web browser, how do we actually go about and find a specific website? We can do this with the use of something called a URL, which is a representation for Uniform Resource Locator. Okay, so every site on the internet has an address known as the URL. Okay, so to access a site, you enter its address, URL, in the web browser, okay, which is something like this. All right, there's a space at the top, okay, labeled address right here. So this right here is where you're gonna enter your URL. Okay, and examples of URL are, for instance, www.nationnews.com or https://www.website.com. Okay, now what is this new thing here, the HTTPS? The HTTPS:// is also a protocol that identifies that this thing that you're accessing is gonna be a website. Okay, so however, most web browsers do not require you to type the HTTPS. All right, some web browsers they do, but more than likely the web browsers that we're using today do not require you. So whenever you want to access Facebook, you don't have to type https://facebook.com. No, you can simply type facebook.com and it will take you to the website. Okay, however, sometimes an address starts with something that's called an FTP as well. So FTP://www.website.com. Whenever a website starts with FTP, this means that you're not accessing a website, but you're accessing sites that allow you to transfer files across the internet. All right. Now, what does it mean to use the word web server? So web server is next to the URL. Okay. So the web server will be this, www.com. Okay, and the web server uses some special software to transmit web pages over the internet. Many web server names are prefixed by, they either have www in front of them, for example www.website.com, www.caribsurf.com, www.sunbeach.net. all right, so these are all called web servers, and sometimes these web servers do have www in front of them, or sometimes they don't. Okay, so this is my protocol, and then this is my web server. Now, once we access a website, the first thing we access in a website is known as the first page, that is called the home page. So if you enter the web server name on a web browser, you will see the first page that's being called out, which will be the home page. So if I type www.youtube.com, that's the web server, youtube.com, the first thing that I'm going to appear is going to be the web page. Okay, and once I'm in this web page, I can connect from one site to another via something called hypertext links on the page. Okay, hypertext links. There can be an icon that will take me to a site on the website that will give me the prices. Then there will go another that I will click somewhere and it's gonna take me to products, and I can move around these different web pages in a website because of the use of hypertext links on the same page. Okay, so after the web server name comes the folder where the file is located. Okay, then the name of the file being retrieved, for instance this. So look at the URL. If I'm accessing a URL on a website or on a web browser, this is the protocol, as I mentioned. This is gonna be the web server, and divided by a slash, this is gonna be the path, or basically the file. This is telling me where the file is located, okay? And then this other extension here is the name extension on web pages that is telling me what type of file I'm accessing, okay? So this is the structure of a URL, okay? Now, accessing the internet, we can access the different information. So if you do not know the URL of the site that you want to access, you can use something called a search engine, okay? So now this search engine is a software application that finds websites using keywords, okay? So search engines have their own websites, such as www.google.com. I've accessed a search engine, okay? There are a bunch of other search engines, but I prefer using google.com. How do search engines work? Search engines works because they index the words of billions of web pages. What is index? So indexing web pages is the way that allows you to search using keywords. So this is undertaken by software robots, also known as spiders, that continually search the web for new sites or updated web pages, okay? So we're able to access these different things using keywords. For instance, if I'm searching for, let me say I want to know about what's happening in Peru right now with all these riots that are happening there. I can simply type Peru riot, and it's gonna find all these websites that are referring to those keywords, Peru and riots, and it's gonna give me all these options of websites. That is called indexing, and that is capable of happening because of software robots called spiders. Okay. Now bookmarks, okay? So whenever you find a site that you think you would like to visit again, for instance, when I do my research to teach you guys, I open multiple different resources online, multiple different websites, and whenever I like one that it's gonna help me to teach you guys, I bookmark that page. Just like whenever you're gonna bookmark a page on a textbook, okay? So I simply click on a little star there on the web browser and bookmark, and I can change the bookmark, and then I click done or save. All right, if I want to look at all my bookmarks, I can go to a section that's called favorite sites, where I can go to all the bookmark pages without me typing the URL or using the search engine all over again. Okay, now bookmarks can also be found on mobile devices. So if you find something that you find interesting while you're navigating using your web browser application on your phone, you can bookmark it, and then you go to your favorite pages where you're gonna see all your bookmark pages that you have so far. Internet cache. So internet cache, when you are using internet, your web browser stores pages and files on your hard disk without you knowing. So if I'm going to different websites, my hard drive component on my device is storing all of these pages that you are using. So the internet cache provides a temporary internet file folder known as cache. So this caching of temporary pages and files is important, as it speeds up the display of pages of sites that I have already been to. Okay, so it creates like different shadows of the websites that you have accessed, and it automatically locates those shadows and pulls them up for you. Okay, so every now and then it's important that you delete, okay, or erase these cache memories installed on your web browser or your phones. So it will delete everything that has been recently frequently used, that has been stored there, and it will allow more space for your hard drive or your device. Okay, now blogs, vlogs, and podcast. Some internet users frequent items of commentary, descriptions of events, graphics, videos, or even audio. Whenever a user posts frequent audio, this is known as podcasting, and this is the icon for podcasting. Okay, so usually someone would record themselves talking about a Bible verse, saying that this Bible verse means this, it means that, and then the recording, they can upload it on the internet, and there are different websites that you can simply search for recordings of things, and the moment you're listening to these recordings, you're listening to something called a podcast. Okay, so this is referred to as podcasting. There is also users on the internet that share blogging, known as blogs. Okay, now these blogs are posted text or picture entries that people can read. All right, if you can follow some volunteer teachers that are teaching us right now, like I think Miss Kaya, if you've seen her, she usually posts blogs on the internet for people in the States and people in the East to read about her journey as a teacher. So it's very interesting, blogs. Okay, and something that's very common is vlogs. So vlogging for posts means that users are gonna be posting videos, video entries, video images, recordings of their journeys that they're doing for viewers and readers to see or to hear. Okay, and they post it usually on websites like YouTube. Okay, so a vlogger, all right, not a blogger. Blogger will just post text or pictures, but a vlogger will post video recordings of themselves. Okay, so now creating a web page. All right, so creating a web page can happen through the use of hypertext markup language known as HTML, which is a text-based language used to create web pages for display by a web browser. So it is basically the formatting language, since it consists of codes like this, which instruct the browser how to create, format, and display its content. Okay, the data to be displayed on these pages is written as plain text and formatting codes. All right, and they appear to mark up the data, hence it's called hypertext markup language. So all the websites that you can access on the internet, they are created with the basics of HTML, of hypertext markup language. Okay, and this is a sample of how HTML looks. You're gonna be covering HTML in the near future. All right, so it's gonna be very interesting to see how you guys are able to create websites using HTML code. Now, voice over internet protocols. Okay, so voice over internet protocols, or VoIP as I prefer to say it, is an internet protocol used to convert the sound of voice into digital form and transmit it over the internet. Skype, for instance, enables users to use internet to make telephone calls to others without having another internet connection. So if you're able to call someone via the internet, you're using the services of voice. You can make calls using Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Skype, Viber, I think it's this one, and these other ones here. Okay, so users avoid paying international call charges compared with an ordinary telephone service. If I want to call my sister that's in Chicago, I can call her using WhatsApp, but if I don't have internet connection, I'm gonna have to pay a very, very expensive bill for me to talk to her for just 5 minutes. Okay, a smartphone is an example of a wireless device that uses or delivers VoIP. All right, okay, and this is an example of me or someone using voice over internet protocol to call someone that has a computer device using one of the applications that I just mentioned. All right, so that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. That's it for this week. Make sure that you answer the questions posted here, and then you complete the activities on Google Classroom using Google Forms. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. All right, and I will gladly answer you if I'm available at the moment. Thank you everyone for your attention.